You're listening to the Seahawks Insiders.
Geno looks, going to lay it up over the top. Got a man out there. It is locking. He has got it. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Getting you ready for Seahawks football every Sunday.
Hurts drops back, has time, loads up, throws. A.J. Brown, the defense. It's intercepted. Does he keep his feet in? He does. Seahawks ball.
Presented by Delta, the official airline of the Seahawks. Now, here's your host, Jen Mueller.
We are broadcasting from the Seahawks podcast studio presented by Sony, the official headphones partner of the Seattle Seahawks. Welcome to another winning week, which I think presumably John Boyle means another winning Seahawks Insiders podcast.
Aren't they all?
That is
I
true.
mean,
you got me there. You got me there.
We bring our A game every week.
That is
win
true.
or lose.
The Seahawks have brought their A game, but before we get to football conversation, there's a much bigger piece of news inside the building this week.
Steph had our boy last night, and both are happy and healthy. Man, it's a kind of a crazy statement to say out loud, but yeah, we're really excited. We're really blessed, obviously. Man, what women can do is just an unbelievable thing. So what a warrior she is, and she's awesome. So just I mean, I'll see her here later on at the hospital, but I think it was an incredible night, and just thankful for everybody at the hospital, the doctors, the nurses. I mean, those people are A++ in what they do. It's pretty awesome that's what they do every day and the stuff they work through. So just really blessed, really excited. I can't wait to see him again tonight, and here we go.
Yes, congrats to Mike and to Stephanie on their first child, a boy named Jack. Very exciting, and it was nice of Jack to come early in the week.
Yes.
It was not while he was in New York.
Right.
And then early in the week, so he's back at practice Wednesday. I mean, I joked with Julian Love yesterday. I was like, man, why didn't you get it this easy? You were having to fly to Nashville on a Saturday after the team already left. And so, yeah, it worked out pretty well, but very exciting times. I mean, it's a crazy year that family has had.
It really is.
Move out here, he becomes a head coach, and now first child. It's very eventful.
And what did he say? Don't confuse hope for a plan.
Yeah.
Where he was hoping that they could time this right, but
well.
It's a critical stretch of games for the Seahawks.
It
Hopefully, Jack means that there's some good luck still in store for the Hawks.
So, yeah.
Okay, not that the Seahawks need luck. You know what they've actually needed the last few weeks? Just their defense.
Yeah.
Holy cow. We can officially say that they have turned the corner, right?
Yeah, I think, 1-2 games, like, okay, this is good, but can they sustain it? But they've done it for 4 games now. One was lost to the Rams, but 4 games of really good defense against some good offenses, some really good offensive minds, good quarterbacks, good running backs. This isn't they beat so-and-so, but this is their quarterback. But they didn't have this star running back. Like, they've been beating some pretty good teams.
And they have held guys in check that had been getting some big yards, including James Conner the last time these teams played. Kind of a weird matchup considering that Seattle just saw Arizona a couple of weeks ago. So it's hard to tell what's the same, what's going to be different about that, and just what kind of an impact Leonard Williams can have again.
Holy
because
smokes.
I really feel like there is a chance for whether it's Leo or one of our other defenders to get Player of the Week for a third straight week.
I mean, here's the thing. We saw what he did to the Cardinals in the last game. They obviously remember that. So one of two things is going to happen. If they do things the same, I think he's going to have another great game. Or if they try to adjust and say, we got to stop this guy, that's going to be opportunity for other players. Because as Mike Macdonald's pointed out, yes, Leonard Williams has been getting the numbers lately, but a lot of guys on that defensive front are playing really well to make that happen. So if you shift too much attention to how are we going to keep Leonard Williams from wrecking the game, there's going to be opportunity for Jaron Reed. There's going to be opportunity for Byron Murphy. There's going to be players who can take advantage of whatever they have to do to stop Leonard Williams.
Well, and here's the thing. So he really feasted on the interior of that Cardinals offensive line, which includes Evan Brown, our former center last year, right? They did change things against Minnesota last week because for as tough as it was to find yards on the ground against the Seahawks, they were over 130, I think, against the Vikings. So something changed on that front to get Kyler Murray a little bit more. And somewhere they were getting pushed. I'm not sure how they did it with the same personnel in the middle of that offensive line, but they did show that they can come out with a different game plan.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, what Arizona's done offensively, really for, going back to before their bye and their 4-game winning streak, they've been a really good offense, really efficient. Kyler Murray's playing well. Their run game's been good. So, I mean, that makes it more impressive what the Seahawks did a couple weeks ago. But you can't just look at, we held this team to 6 points. We held James Conner to 8 yards on 7 carries and assume it's just going to be an easy, dominant performance again.
Agreed, especially when you look at what that defense for the Cardinals has done at home. I don't want to go past the Leonard Williams conversation without saying this, and I am like jumping up and down on the sidelines as I watch the big man run.
He was moving.
Do you know that he always wanted to be a running back?
I saw that he told you he played some rugby when he was younger.
He played
correct?
rugby. So here's the thing. He has always been so big that he has been too big to play Pop Warner football.
Yeah.
So he did not start playing football until he was 14 years old. And when he was 14, they just stuck him on the defensive side of the ball. And I said, come on, like you had to have played something on offense. Every like high-level player I've ever known has played both ways at some point in time.
Yep.
It was like, nope, I was too big. They put me on the defensive side. That's where I was. But I always wanted to be a running back.
I mean,
He looked really natural.
him playing high school running back would have been really awesome.
It would have been dangerous.
Yeah.
It would have been really
'Cause,
dangerous.
You know, by NFL running back standards, he might not look fast, but on a high school field, that speed would be pretty elite.
He hit 17 miles an hour.
He was cruising.
I can't even imagine
Yeah.
running that fast. And then what was he? He was looking to pitch the ball and he realized,
Yeah, he said
no.
he said at midfield he didn't think he was going to make it, and he was looking for someone to pitch it to, and then he looks around and all he sees is his teammates. He's like, oh, all right,
That's pretty cool.
keep going.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out, the thing that Mike Macdonald wanted to see more from his defense was takeaways, and they have an interception now in 6 straight games.
Yep. Pick 6 and 2 straight.
Pick 6 and 2 straight
Yep.
games. Okay, let's talk about this matchup and what it actually looks like this week. When you think about Arizona, that defense has been good at home. So the Cardinals have lost 2 straight games on the road. They've actually won 3 straight at home. They've held opponents in each of those games without a touchdown. Their defense has not allowed a touchdown at home since week 4. What does that mean, John?
That means Seahawks are going to have to be better and more consistent on offense than they have been in recent games. I mean, as much as we love what we've seen on defense, the offense is, they've come up with some really clutch drives when they need them. They've made some big plays, but they've not got the production that they really want in a few games now where it's, they're struggling. Either some games it's been turnovers. They didn't turn the ball over last week on offense, which was big for them. But, I think a lot of this goes back to what's been a very inconsistent run game. And you're putting yourself in tough third downs. It's hard to stay on the field, to stay in drives. We saw a few glimpses in the second half, I feel like, in the run game. We can save the short yardage red zone stuff for another conversation. But overall, I think we saw progress in the run game last week. And to me, that'd be a really good way to jumpstart the offense this week.
Yeah, I don't know what you're going to get against that defense in Arizona. I think what surprised me in New York was that was a Jets defense that, for being top 10, we talked about this last week, they were giving up 130 on the ground a game, and yet you end up playing to your average, not to their average at the end of that game. We did see a change at right guard. We saw Satoa Laumea go the entire way, and it sounds like that's exactly what we're going to get this week.
That's the plan right now. There's a couple mentals to start out the game. But talking about rookie playing his first meaningful NFL action. But we felt him out there. I thought he did a great job getting used to the game. So excited about him. But that's the plan right now, is to stick with Tawa.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be perfect. That was not just his first start. He had been inactive every game this season. So his first regular season action, period. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be mistakes. But overall, he looked really good out there. I talked to Laken Tomlinson, their veteran left guard, and he was really impressed with just how well he handled that, everything that comes with first start on the road. And, really cool moment for him. He had one of the key blocks on what ended up being the game-winning touchdown run to help open a hole for Zach Charbonnet. So, yeah, really encouraging stuff. He's got to build on it and get a little better. But, this line has had a hard time finding consistency, whether it's just been the competition at that right guard spot or injuries. But if they can find a mix and kind of finish the season strong, and then maybe we see that run game get going.
He was a post-game interview last week in the clubhouse. The first time I've really talked to him since the draft. I mean, there's been some hellos, but the first time I've really had an extended conversation since the draft. And he said, yeah, I was nervous. It took a little while. So you hear Mike Macdonald say there were some mentals there on the first few. So mental mistakes, if you didn't hear that all the way. And he said, yeah, I was nervous. I did feel jitters. It took me at least a series before I settled in. And difficult to settle in. Think about how that first quarter of the game against the Jets played out. there's no offensive snaps to get into a rhythm
yeah,
with.
you turn it over on 2 kickoffs in the first half. It's like there weren't a lot of opportunities for that offense. And, oh, by the way, number 95 on that Jets defense, pretty good player, Quinnen Williams. So you're dealing with, one of the league's best interior linemen. And as you said, a really weird, disjointed half of football.
It was. It was Leslie Frazier who was going up and down the bench, who was reminding guys, hey, look, there's still a lot of football to play in this one. Just look at the next step. He's been an interesting one we got to hear from this week.
That was fun.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
I mean, it was for good reason, right?
Yeah.
He fills in because Mike Macdonald is with his wife at the hospital, having the baby, all of those things. It's fun to hear from Leslie. He is so measured all the time.
Yeah.
He's so calm.
Yeah, which is a
So
great
measured.
trait for that role of like you're there
Yep.
to support a first-year head coach. And we talked to Mike Macdonald about this before the season, and I talked to Leslie Frazier this summer. And I think sometimes people think like assistant head coach is sort of this like figurehead. Let's just like give a guy a title because he's been around a long time. Like that's a really important role for Mike Macdonald, who he recognized. As much as I know about defense, and I, obviously the Seahawks think highly of him to make him a head coach, he's never done the job before. And there's a lot to that job as a head coach that you can't know till you've done it. So to have a guy like Leslie Frazier, who's been around the NFL for decades, who's been a head coach, he's been a lot of places, that's a huge resource for Mike Macdonald. And they're, you watch practice, you see them in the halls, like they're together a lot. This is not a guy that's just sort of there. It's like Mike Macdonald is bouncing a lot off Leslie Frazier every day.
Well, and for the background that Leslie Frazier has on defense, he's equally involved in the offense. And he has been able to watch Mike grow, so he can kind of be the go-between. And he was really open. He said it a little bit on Monday. He said it in the preseason. 7 years ago, I would have never been able to picture Mike Macdonald standing up in front of a team and leading them. And now he is doing phenomenally well in that position. So it's kind of cool to have that perspective where you see the growth and you see where this can go.
For sure. Yeah, it's interesting because Leslie Frazier was essentially Macdonald's boss. He was not the head coach, but he was a secondary coach, and Macdonald was a young assistant working with the secondary. So roles changed a little bit, but it's really fun to see, get that perspective from Leslie Frazier on Mike Macdonald.
We are broadcasting from the Seahawks podcast studio presented by Sony, the official headphones partner of the Seattle Seahawks. The Hawks heading on the road this week. They've been pretty good. They've been 4-1 on the road. This one has a lot of implications, and we expect to see a lot of Seahawks fans down in the desert, which is why I will still be using some noise-canceling headphones. In this NFL season, you can feel every play, every hit, every moment with the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones, the official headphones of the Seattle Seahawks. With premium noise cancellation, you are in the zone. No distractions, just pure football. Whether you are in your living room or on the go, you will never miss a beat with Sony headphones. It is true the Seahawks fans are far louder in Arizona than the Cardinals fans. I'm sorry,
No,
it's just true.
They have great fans. I think, it's a fun and easy place for Seahawks fans to travel in December.
Warm? I'm assuming it's warm. I haven't looked. I'm just going to take for granted.
Mid to upper 70s.
Oh, perfect.
Beautiful. Yeah, that might even be open the roof weather.
That would be surprising.
It's kind of a fine window they have there between when it's too hot and then when you start
I
getting
think
weird.
there's also an issue with sunlight blinding some of the people in the seats.
Well, then maybe not.
So, I mean, it doesn't affect me on the field.
Either way,
so, I mean, it's lovely if they wanted to open.
A great place for Seahawks fans to travel, and B, I just think there's a lot of Seahawks fans down there. So, yeah, it gets pretty loud and see a lot of the green and blue jerseys, and hopefully we get more of that.
Hopefully we do. This week, according to Aaron Schatz of NFL, he's done a number of things around the NFL, but he's A. Schatz NFL on X. Seahawks at Cardinals is by far the most important game of the week for the playoff picture. In their simulations, a Seahawks win would make the Seahawks 62% likely to make the playoffs, with the Cardinals at 17%. If the Cardinals win, it's 71% for Arizona, 11% for Seattle. Those numbers sound about right.
Yeah, I mean, you look at where they are in the standings and tiebreaker stuff, where if the Seahawks win, it doesn't only open up a 2-game lead. It's a 2-game lead with a tiebreaker with 4 games to play. Look, you still have to worry about the other teams in the division. They're not out of it either, but for the top 2 teams right now, that's a huge deciding factor. And if the Cardinals beat you, you're tied up, and they're going to have the tiebreakers with conference record and division record.
Yes, and the Seahawks schedule, if you look at strength of schedule, is actually harder than the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's another big
because
piece
you've
of-
still got Green Bay and Minnesota coming up. You've got Chicago in weather. Like, I know what the record says for the Bears, but that is a tough place to play the day after Christmas, and then the Rams are a tough matchup always.
Yeah, Chicago especially. You're going on a short week, and they, as much as their record doesn't look good, they've been competitive lately. They're pushing teams to the finish. So I don't look at any game left on the schedule and think, oh, that's an easy win. Like it's going to be tough. And you're right. The Cardinals have a little bit easier of a path, so why getting this one for the Seahawks would be mighty, mighty big.
You know what's kind of interesting about this is that we know the implications of this. This is the first season in 14 years players have talked about the implications of a single game in December, right?
It's a little different.
It's a little different. It's not bad. It's just different.
I don't think it's as different as people are making it out to be. Because with Pete Carroll, it was every week's the same, treated all the same.
Every week's a championship opportunity.
And they're talking about this being like a playoff game. But basically what they've been saying is every week's a playoff game because this isn't the language, but they're essentially saying it's the biggest game we have right now. And I can't remember who the player is, but somebody said, like, made that comment, like, this is the game we have this week. And so it's not as I don't think they're sitting here looking at the playoff odds right now, and I don't think they're looking at, oh, Arizona's got Carolina while we have to play Green Bay. Like, I don't think they're treating it like we are. I do think, though, it's just more of a difference of language, but it's still the ultimate goal of that language is to focus on this game and make this game the big deal, and that's what Pete Carroll's trying to do as well. He just worded it a little differently. Yeah,
and if you were going to be playing playoff-type games in December, you got to have all three phases going. We've talked a little offense, a little defense. Special teams is a big conversation. Yeah, it's a big conversation. And look, we know what. Let's focus on the positives.
All right.
Jason Myers, 7 field goals this year, 50 yards or more. He has been absolute money. Michael Dixon can flip the field better than anybody else. He's dealing with back spasms. Yes. The return game for the Seahawks on kickoff returns has been pretty good this year, but their top returner,
I'm sensing a however,
was released, and you're coming off a game where, I mean, it looked like the wheels fell off on special teams.
That was rough. Like, to turn it over twice and put a third kickoff on the ground that they were able to recover, like, that's just a disaster. You had a kick blocked. You gave up a 99-yard touchdown return. To do all that and win is pretty amazing, by the way, but it was rough to see. And
yes. To the point where I actually thought maybe they were trying some different alignments. Like maybe they had schemed up something different that they'd seen on film, and it just, like, the Jets went away from that. Patrick O'Connell, who was on special teams for 14 snaps, every team except punt team, said it was a case of people trying to do too much. For whatever reason that is, he attributed a lot of that to trying to do too much. However they got there, the Seahawks have some question marks that they're looking to answer before Sunday.
Yeah, I'd say, like, both returner spots in the punt and the kickoff return game we're working through still, so we don't have an answer quite yet. We have some people that we're going to be working at those spots, D included, so I just don't have an answer for you exactly what we're going to do right now.
Yeah, so D. Williams, he's been one of their 2 kick returners all year and their punt returner. As Mike Macdonald, he'll be in the mix, but it's not a lock he's going to be back there. He did have one of those fumbles. He has muffed a couple punts this year, so it hasn't been as clean as you'd like from the rookie. Who's it going to be? We'll have to wait and see. You know, I know Kenny McIntosh has done it in the past. We saw Zach Charbonnet back there in the short portion open to the media yesterday. Derek Young's been back there for returns in the past, so he's another option they could look at. But yeah, I don't know. Trey Brown has some return experience. I don't know if he's done it in an NFL game, but he's definitely done it in training camp. He did it in college. So we'll have to see what they do with that position. But yeah, I mean, you'd love to get some big returns and some big plays, but more than anything, you just need to be ball secure. Like, you can't. I mean, we saw that.
You can't sacrifice yards, and you can't be starting from deep in your own territory.
And most of all, you can't be giving the ball away.
Yes.
Like, that's going back real quick to Jason Myers before we get off special teams. That 54-yard field goal, given everything going on special teams, was, like, to me, the underrated play of the game. I mean, obviously Leo had the play of the game, but I think all of us, when they went out to kick that field goal, were like, oh God, what's going to happen? Like, is it going to get blocked? Is it, like, I was like, snap over somebody's head and they're going to return it for a touchdown. Like, I was thinking the worst. So for him in bad weather, cold, windy day to drill that That was a pretty big moment, I think, to maybe settle some people down on special teams.
And the fact that Michael Dixon was able to finish the game holding.
You see him getting up and down when he had to get down to hold it?
I was watching him on the sidelines the entire time and nothing happened. And he said that. He was like, I don't know. Like, I went to go and grab the ball and my back just tightened up. And he was in some obvious pain. And they worked for a very long time. And he came back out of the locker room and I watched him go through one motion. And, kind of the word was if you had to get him, if he had to, he was going to be able to do it once.
And then he's going to be probably laying on the ground holding his back after he kicked it.
My gosh. But I don't think people realize how big of a deal that is because if you put Brady Russell out there, first of all, you had windy conditions. It is cold. It is a big-time play in a big-time game. I'm not saying Brady Russell can't do it. You don't want your backup holder out there.
That whole... the mechanics of all that, it seems so routine because they practice all the time, but a lot can go wrong if you change one element of it. Seahawks fans who've been watching this team for a while might remember 2013 against the Titans. Stephen Hauschka gets hurt making a tackle. It's the end of the half. They decide to send John Ryan out to kick a short field goal. You're thinking, worse it happens. Maybe they miss it. Not a big deal. It's the end of the half. No, Chris Maragos filling in as a holder. Can't quite recover it or can't quite handle it. He gets up and runs, fumbles, goes the other way, 90 yards for a touchdown. So nothing against Chris Maragos. Wasn't his position. But that's just a good example of it might not seem like a big deal. Oh, he's the backup holder. But that's a more complex play than people realize because they just make it look so routine.
Also, it is a much different process to kick a field goal than to punt the ball. So for people who said, why didn't Jason Myers just go out there and punt? Look, I watched him practice doing that a few times on the sideline. No idea where that ball was going to go. I'm not saying just because you can go through the motion does not mean that is a given. So
nor has he spent a lot of time catching snaps from way back
there is
there,
that
which
too.
is a totally different play as well.
Yes, and you actually would have to change your shoes for that. A kicker has different shoes. And he likes them tighter and differently. You don't really want that bouncing off the top of your foot. We are broadcasting from the Seahawks podcast studio presented by Sony, the official headphones partner of the Seattle Seahawks. Let's get back to a couple of things that we need to consider on Sunday. We're thinking about special teams. You're thinking about bottling up James Conner. Trey McBride is actually the one who racked up the most yards against the Seahawks in that first meeting, 133. And yet, do you know this, John? He holds the NFL record. He has 73 receptions this year, 0 touchdown catches.
I noticed that when I looked at
he has 2
stats,
touchdowns, but not off of passes.
Oh, really? They're rushing?
He's got one that was a fumble and one that was a designed run.
Okay. Yeah.
How about that?
When I looked at his stat, I was like, man, he's having a great... Wait a minute. Where are his
Where
touchdowns?
are the touchdowns?
How? Yeah.
I know.
And you think tight ends, pass-catching tight ends as being these really good red zone weapons.
I know.
Let's not jinx it, though. So
I know. Well, I would say knock on wood or just count on the Seahawks defense, but it's not just slowing him down, as we mentioned, as a pass catcher. He's going to affect the game in a lot of ways.
Well, I think it happens really in all 3 phases, both in the drop back game. He's a really good route runner, so he can get open on his own. In their action stuff, he's fast enough to run away and has a good feel for the zones down the field. And then he arguably makes most damage in the catch and run stuff on some of the movements and screening in that they have for him. So they can get him involved in really their entire entire passing game. So it's not just one thing where you have to eliminate.
The Seahawks obviously want to do a better job against McBride. We saw one of the plays in that game. I remember Macdonald looked really angry. Was clearly something got messed up in the coverage, and he was just wide open. It wasn't one of his longer plays. But you made this point, Jen. Mike Macdonald's never going to admit to this, but there's got to be some sense of look, if their star running back has 8 yards and we keep them out of the end zone, and Kyler Murray doesn't run all over us, and their tight end gets 133 yards, you can kind of live with that. Again, you're not going to this game saying, let's just let the tight end get what he can get. But sometimes a good, talented offense, Cardinals have a lot of weapons, you can't take away every single thing. So I will gladly trade the overall result last game for the 133 yards, but I also don't want to see him running quite so open so often.
Well, I feel like you're just kind of playing with fire. But Mike Macdonald did say earlier in the season when we asked about explosive plays and how you chart those, he goes, look, you can torture the numbers. It really comes down to how did that play affect the game. Seattle was able to keep him in check when it mattered because he didn't score and Kyler Murray didn't find the end zone. Let's pause right now for a quick word from our presenting sponsor.
Statistically, the world is losing color. Just consider all-white kitchens, beige baby nurseries, a sea of gray cars. But in the hundreds of destinations Delta flies to, you can rediscover color in the bright blue waters of Hawaii, the emerald green hills of Scotland, the berry pink cherry blossoms of Tokyo, and so much more. Sometimes opening your world is all it takes to open your mind, which is why when you fly Delta, your potential takes off when you do. Delta, official airline of the Seattle Seahawks.
We've covered this matchup from start to finish, and it's kind of, almost a rehash of a couple of weeks ago. But I do have two new things I need to see from the Seahawks.
All right.
I won't say new. I have two very specific things I need to see from the Seahawks this week to get a win.
All right, let's hear it.
Number one, I need to see Geno stay upright because the Cardinals had 5 sacks in that first
especially
meeting.
third downs.
Exactly. In fact, the Cardinals, where was my number? I think they've racked up 26 sacks in the last 3 games, and 5 of those came against Geno Smith. So keep him upright. On the defensive side of things, red zone defense. You might remember that when the Cardinals came to town, they were 16 for 16 in goal-to-go situations. They are now 0 for 3 in those situations the last couple of weeks, just 1 for 8 in the red zone the last 2 weeks. So red zone defense, step up and keep those numbers. Keep that trend going downward for the Cardinals.
I like that.
And you?
We talked about this earlier, but I think a big overall issue with the Seahawks offense not functioning as well as they want has been the run game. And again, we saw some glimpses in the second half, and I just want to see a more productive run game, get somewhere in the 100 to 120 rushing yard, like designed rushing yards, not the 40-yard or 30-yard Geno Smith scramble, which I like. I'll take it. But I want some Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet rushing yards, and then I want to keep the turnovers going. Get another interception. I mean, we could be greedy and say another defensive touchdown, but let's just have 2 takeaways. Don't care how we get them.
I feel like you're a little greedy on both of those. So why not just, go for the home run?
200 rushing yards and 4 pick sixes. No.
Wait a minute. You're averaging 87 rushing yards a game, and you don't think 120 is greedy?
I said between 100 and 120. I put a range on it.
Okay.
And no, I don't think it's greedy.
Okay.
I think this offense can be better, and I
think it can.
I'm like the parent who expects more out of their children.
The B- isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, like you can do better. That's all.
We started with parenthood talk. We're going to end with parenthood talk, and we'll be back next week for another edition of the Seahawks Insiders Podcast.